In my last video, we discussed how important it is for landlords and property managers to have a written policy on when a tenant is eligible for lease renewal. Got a little pushback, and one of the questions that someone posed to me that I did not address was, should you give a detailed reason to your tenant why you're not renewing their lease? And we're going to discuss that in today's video. Hey everyone, if we've never met before, my name is Vojchehoske and welcome to the channel where my mission is simple, and that's to enhance the landlord-tenant relationship. So in my previous video, I detailed and outlined the reasons why if you're a landlord or property manager, you must have a written policy that has a set of criteria that determines whether or not your tenant is eligible for renewal. This way here, your decision is objective. And from a risk management point of view, insofar as fair housing, number one, you're treating your tenants equally in that analysis. And number two is, should a complaint be filed, then you can defend yourself. That's why it is so important to have written objective standards, such as a tenant selection policy and a lease renewal policy. However, one of the questions that I did not address that really came up was, should you tell your tenant the specific reason why you're not renewing the lease? Now, there are two camps here. The first camp, and the most popular, is we're not going to tell them anything other than we're not renewing their lease. So in their 30-day notice, that's it. We're not going to renew your lease. Thank you very much. And there are a couple of reasons why this is legitimate. The first reason is we don't want to give any ammunition to our tenant to argue with us, because if we give a specific reason, that tenant there's a likelihood that that tenant is going to call us and start arguing with us. The situation escalates and nothing good comes from that. The second reason is, and probably whether landlords and tenants know it or not, it's because they don't have a written policy. And so if you don't have a written policy, you don't give a reason why. The problem, as I said in the previous video, and again, I'm going to leave a link right up here, is if you don't have a written policy, you're going to treat two of your tenants differently when it comes to lease renewal. And that's going to put you in substantial fair housing jeopardy. Now, the other side of it is we do want to give specific notice. Now, if you're going to give specific notice, here is what I would recommend to you. Make sure you have a written objective policy on the set of criteria, as we discussed, of when a tenant is eligible for renewal. If that tenant does not meet that eligibility requirement, then it's real simple. In your notice, you write, based on our tenant renewal policy, you don't meet the criteria, therefore we're not going to rent to you. That is the specific reason that you should give 100% of the time. I don't think you need to get into the specific reason, like, hey, you had 2 or more 7-day notice to pay or quits, therefore you're ineligible for lease renewal. I don't think you get that specific. Just keep it generic. Based on our tenant selection, our lease renewal policy, you are not eligible. And then leave it at that. One thing is for certain, though, whatever option you choose, it's all or none. One of the things that's going to get you in fair housing jeopardy really quick is if for some tenants you give a specific reason why, or any reason why, and then for others you don't. It's all or none. We got to treat our tenants the same and equally, otherwise you're in substantial fair housing jeopardy. So it's all or none. I do want to address one other thing. I got a couple of landlords that reached out to me and said, I'm sick and tired of hearing about all of these policies that we have to have and these written policies. I don't have time for that, etc. Well, my answer to that is then get out of the business or turn it over to a property manager. If you're not willing to run the business, this is a highly regulated business. And if you're not willing to run the business the way that the law requires, like it or not, then you shouldn't be in the business. And part of that is complying with fair housing, which means you got to have written policies for all of your processes, including that tenant selection policy and that lease renewal policy. Don't be a tight ass here. And I hate to say this, but when I bring this up, I get a lot of pushback. Spend $1,000, hire an attorney to write up your tenant selection policy, to write up your lease renewal policy, and then it's one and done. One and done. The attorney creates it, the attorney approves it, then you follow it strictly. That's all you have to do. It's one and done. If you don't have the money to do that, that's the cost of doing business, then get out of the business. And that is my opinion. Now, if you want to watch that video where we discuss in detail the written policy, check out this video right here. Other than that, thanks everybody. I'll see you in the next video.